Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blitz, your weekly Lorain County High School football show brought to you this year by First Federal Savings of Lorain. I'm your host, Marissa McNeese of the Chronicle, Telegram, and WEOL, joined on location this week, as always, by my partner, Kristen Bauer, who was very gracious to loan me these sunglasses because we are at a very bright and sunshiny Ely Stadium here in Elyria, where the Pioneers have a huge game coming up later on this week. We'll, of course, get into all of that later in the show. We've got a lot to recap from this past week of high school football action. But first, a brief COVID update. We didn't have any Lorain County teams with their games canceled this week, but there was a little bit of an adjustment. Elyria Catholic at the last minute changing their opponent. They go out to Youngstown and play Cardinal Mooney. The Panthers picking up the win in that one, but a little bit of adjustment on the fly. But otherwise, another week, no Lorain County teams seeing their games canceled, which is always a good thing. Because these things do happen so quickly, though, it's always good. Check Twitter, check ChronicleT.com. We have all of your updates just in case one of these games does get canceled again. But we seem to have been moving in a positive direction. There were a couple weeks there where we had one and then two of our teams with their games canceled. So far, everyone's played the past few weeks, so let's hope that trend continues. But now we've got a lot to talk about from this past week of high school football. We have to just jump right into it. The biggest upset of the season, at least in Lorain County, it was Midview upsetting Avon Lake 24-21, an absolutely huge win for the Middies, who were at one point 0-4 this season. They won their last two games. They beat Amherst the week before, and now a huge win over Avon Lake, who had been sitting at the top of the conference, was ranked a couple weeks ago, number 3 in Division II in the state. But boy, the Middies really with a potent passing attack. If you read Sean Bennett's recap in the Chronicle Telegram the next day, he talked all about that. And one of the big post-game comments was from the players who said, no one gave us a chance in this game except for us. And unfortunately, I think that was true. Avon Lake had been coming off a big loss, was really looking to bounce right back, maintain their status at the top of the conference. And so I think a lot of people, including myself, thought the Shoremen were going to come in and really dominate that game. But as we've heard about Midview this season, the Middies are way better than what their record shows. Maybe for some of us on the outside, it was difficult to see that at first, but if you talk to any of the SWC coaches, they have said that's a team. It didn't matter what their record was. They have talent. They lost their starting quarterback in week 1 and still really been able to turn around, especially in the passing game, which is really impressive. So this is a team that now is on quite the hot streak. 2 wins in a row. They're 2-4. That doesn't sound that exciting, but a huge win over Avon Lake for the Middies, who now have a ton of momentum heading into the second half of the season. And for Avon Lake, I'm not sure. They've got a lot to turn it around. We don't really know where they go from here. They've got to start stringing some more wins together to stay atop this conference. And I think Coach Kostelnik and his crew will certainly go back to the drawing board, figure some things out. But little bit of figuring out to do for Avon Lake. But again, a huge upset for Midview over the Shoremen. Moving over to the Lorain County League, a couple big games to talk about in that league. We're going to start, though, with Keystone, which goes on the road to Firelands, a big rival, a big Lorain County League matchup, and the Wildcats win 26-17. Though it wasn't easy, it hasn't been for Keystone all season. Coach Don Griswold will attest to that. They've been ugly, gritty wins, but hey, they're winning, which I guess at the end of the day is all that matters. But the Wildcats find themselves once again, the second week in a row, down by 3 at halftime, having to make some adjustments and seemingly pulling out a win based on sheer force of will. They weren't going to lose. You could tell by the way they played, and they really turned it up in the second half, particularly on defense, really stepping up the pressure. You've heard me talk about Gideon Lampron and his running ability. When he has the ball, it seems like nobody can bring him down. But really on defense, he made quite a big impact for the Wildcats. He had a number of tackles, but it was an interception in the second half after Keystone had scored to take the lead for then to start another scoring drive for the Wildcats. So really making an impact on both sides of the ball. Firelands coach Ryan O'Rourke said after the game, I think his quote was, "They have a kid over there that can do some crazy things on both sides of the ball." And I think that's pretty accurate. He said, "We tried a game plan around him for the past 4 years and still it hasn't worked." But when you have an athlete like that, really difficult to game plan around just the one, but the Wildcats have a number of really talented athletes. Connor Rodick connects once again with Ryan Shackelford for a big touchdown in the back corner of the end zone, a play we saw last week work against Wellington. The Wildcats have these weapons. They're not so, it's taking them a little bit to use them, which I think Coach Griswold would agree might be sort of a problem as we move forward into later half of the season and the postseason. We have to start turning it up earlier and not waiting until the second half to pick up the pressure. But when you've got the kind of athletes Keystone has, you're able to get away with some of these things. And they're pulling out these gritty, ugly wins, as Coach Griswold would say. So the Wildcats, another big Lorain County League matchup this week against Brookside, and we'll see what they can do if they can finally get that fast start they've been looking for. And Fireland's a tough part of their schedule coming up. They're going to have to turn it around to keep putting the pressure on these teams in the top of the conference. So a big game again, Keystone beating Firelands 26-17. Another team, though, again, the only undefeated team left in Lorain County, the Columbia Raiders. They're 6-0 after another huge win this week over Clearview. You've heard about Marco Sirigliano, the sophomore running back for the Raiders, who I think he's got a handful of touchdowns each game to this point. But this week, it was Owen Mengi. He had 5 touchdowns for the Raiders. This is an athlete who we haven't heard maybe his name as much this season, but if you ask Coach Jason Ward, this is an all-around talented athlete for the Raiders. He makes a huge impact. He has in his time with the program. He's a really solid asset to this team, and we saw that this week against Clearview. He came out with 5 touchdowns, keeps the Raiders undefeated, and they have a big game this week. They got to go on the road and play Wellington, a team we've talked about. This is an improved Wellington team. They've got a strong defense. They haven't been able to maybe finish out some of these games where they have the lead. Remember, they had the lead against Keystone, and they maintained it through the fourth quarter. Then they just started to wear down a little bit. So we'll see how they can keep the pressure up against a Columbia Raiders offense that seems to be unstoppable. I mean, nobody's been able to stop them to this point. So this is going to be an interesting Lorain County League matchup when Columbia travels this week to take on Wellington. Before I name this week's team of the week, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Of course, we focus on Lorain County High School football here on the Blitz, but each week on WEOL, if you tune into Stream 3, you can hear our Medina County matchup. So let's talk a little bit, if you'll humor me, some Medina County High School football in what was another stunning upset. You might argue bigger than the Midview upset over Avon Lake, but this was Brunswick on a Hail Mary beating Menor, perennial state power, 16-14, a huge win for that program. I got to catch up with Coach Mark Pinzoni on Saturday on the WEOL Saturday Morning Sports Wrap-Up Show after the game, and just so excited for his program. He's worked the past few years to really turn that program around, and now you're seeing a lot of these players now buying in, having the confidence to throw a Hail Mary against a team like Menor, and not to mention that Brunswick had to go on the road and do it. That's a tough place to play, but after the game, it was, I think, Brunswick tight end who said, now we know we can beat Menor, we can beat anybody. And it's not just us that knows it, it's going to be Brunswick teams to come. So just a really exciting win. We have to talk about it. It's a huge high school football story in Northeast Ohio. And of course, you'll be able to hear Brunswick this week on your Medina County matchup on WEOL. Since we're just throwing all rules aside here on the Blitz this week, for Team of the Week, I gave it to him last week, but how could I not give this week's Team of the Week to the Midview Middies? We don't normally give it to teams 2 weeks in a row, but it was the biggest win of the season for the Middies, the biggest upset in the county for sure. Middies beating Avon Lake 24-21, a program, I don't know if it's program building. That was sort of the talk after the game. It's a program building win. That's an established program. So I'd like to call it more of a reestablishing of the Middies program. We know those really talented Midview teams of the past. They're now starting to put that together again, and now they're making some noise in the SWC the second half of the season. So this week, for the second week in a row, we had to give our Team of the Week to the Midview Middies. Before we wrap it up here on the Blitz, a couple games we have to look ahead to this Friday. Some big matchups in Lorain County High School football. First, it is Olmsted Falls traveling to Avon, a huge SWC matchup. Olmsted Falls in first place in the conference, and Avon sitting at a place they're not normally used to. They've got 2 losses. They're behind Olmsted Falls, but they're hosting the Bulldogs. These are always really exciting games. I got to catch up with both coaches this weekend, and each sort of said the same thing. Coach Tom DeLuca of Olmsted Falls said Avon is the bar in the SWC, and Coach Mike Elder of Avon said about the same thing. These are 2 programs that really respect each other. They always play really competitive, exciting high school football games, and that atmosphere at Avon, it's unlike anything else. So a really big matchup coming up this week in the SWC when Olmsted Falls travels to Avon. Another big SWC, we're going to keep it in the SWC. But right here at Elyria, the Pioneers will be hosting North Ridgeville. You can catch that game on WEOL Stream 2 this week. The Pioneers, after starting 3-0, they're now 3-3. North Ridgeville, they started 3-1. They're also 3-3. Two teams that are on a bit of a losing streak, but two teams that have the talent to make for a really, really good game here this Friday. North Ridgeville's offense, really, really high powered. They've got a great, great running game. And Elyria, we've seen them step it up this season. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're good on defense. So we're going to see how these two teams stack up against each other when you put that high-powered North Ridgeville offense against a team like Elyria. It's going to be a great matchup. You won't want to miss it. And you can, of course, catch that one on WEOL this Friday. Other games this Friday on WEOL, you can catch Elyria Catholic traveling to Westlake for a GLC matchup. That one will be on the radio and on Stream 1, WEOL.com. Of course, North Ridgeville traveling here to Ely Stadium to take on Elyria. That will be on Stream 2. And your Medina County matchup this week, it is Solon taking on Brunswick. That will be on Stream 3 on WEOL.com. All right, I just got the wrap it up signal from my partner, Kristen Bauer. So for all of us here at the Blitz, for Kristen, for WEOL, for the Chronicle Telegram, I am Marissa McNeese, and we will see you next week on the Blitz.